You know, in ancient times, a promise wasn't just, well, a promise. It was this sacred bond, a vow that could literally shape your destiny. But here's the thing. Who actually had the authority to make a pledge that would stick? We're about to dive into a fascinating legal text that reveals a surprisingly complex answer. So, can a promise be undone? Seems like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? But in the ancient legal text we're digging into, the answer is anything but simple. It all hinges on one crucial factor: who you are. So, let's start to unravel this. Okay, first things first, let's be totally clear about the stakes here. We're not talking about a casual, hey, I'll call you later. The text uses the word vow for a big reason. This is a sacred oath, a pledge made directly to a higher power. Breaking it wasn't just bad manners, it was a serious spiritual problem. To really get a handle on this whole system, we need a starting point, right? A baseline. And the text provides one. It kicks things off with the foundational rule for a man's word. Just look at the language here. It is so direct. The source text leaves zero wiggle room. For a man, there are no ifs, ands, or buts, no escape clauses. His word is absolute. So, to put it simply, a man's vow is a sealed deal. Once he's spoken it, he's bound by it. This is our baseline, the standard we're going to use to measure all the other rules in this system. Now that we've got our baseline, let's introduce the first complication. What happens when the person making the vow is a young woman, still living in her father's house? This is where we see a powerful new element enter the picture: the father's authority. The text is very specific here. Her location, the fact that she's in her father's household, is everything. Her position inside that social structure is the absolute key to understanding the rule that applies to her vow. And this slide just lays out the whole dynamic perfectly. The father has a simple, binary choice. If he hears her vow and stays quiet, his silence is legally considered consent. Her vow is binding. But if on the very day he hears it, he forbids it, poof, the vow is instantly nullified. The text even says, the Lord will release her, which shows you just how complete that cancellation is. The authority is his and his alone. So, what happens when this woman gets married? Well, as her circumstances change, we see that the authority over her vows simply gets transferred to a new figure, her husband. And the logic here is perfectly consistent. It doesn't matter if she made the vow before or after the wedding. Once she's married, the authority over that pledge transfers from her father to her new husband. And take a look at this. The slide is nearly identical to the one about the father. And that's exactly the point. The pattern just repeats. The husband's silence acts as consent, and his objection nullifies the vow. It's a direct continuation of the same legal and social structure, just in the marital home now. But here's where things get even more interesting. The text adds a crucial detail, a little wrinkle that is unique to the husband's authority. His power to nullify his wife's vow isn't unlimited. There's a ticking clock. Let's walk through this step by step. First, the wife makes a vow. Her husband hears it, but says nothing. From day to day, that's a direct quote from the text, and it's critical. His prolonged silence is legally seen as consent. Now, if he changes his mind later and tries to cancel the vow, it's too late. The vow stands. And here's the crucial part. He now has to bear the consequences. Because he delayed, the responsibility for that vow has officially been transferred to him. So far, we've seen rules for men, daughters, and wives, all defined by their role within a household. But the text doesn't stop there. It addresses one final category: women who are independent, not under the authority of a father or a husband. The text is very specific here, identifying two groups: widows and divorced women. Within the context of this law, they are considered autonomous agents. And for these women, the rule is exactly the same as it is for a man. Their vow is absolutely binding. Because they are not part of a father's or husband's household, they hold sole authority, and therefore sole responsibility for any pledge they make. Okay, so we've looked at all the individual pieces, but when you put them all together, you realize these aren't just separate rules. They form a complete, coherent system based entirely on relationships. This table lays it all out. You can see the pattern so clearly. If there's no authority figure listed, like for a man or a widow, the vow is binding. If there is an authority figure, a father or a husband, the vow's status suddenly becomes conditional. And this gets right to the heart of it. In this system, the power of your promise has less to do with your personal intention and everything to do with your position in the family. As this slide shows, authority and responsibility are woven directly into the fabric of these relationships. And what's remarkable is just the simplicity of the outcomes. Despite all these different scenarios and the complex web of family authority we've just seen, when you boil it all down, there are only two possibilities. A vow is either binding or it's nullified. There's no middle ground, no room for negotiation. And this really is the ultimate takeaway. This legal framework isn't about judging whether a promise was good or bad, wise or foolish. It's about clarifying one thing: who has the final say? It's a law about social order, a blueprint for how a family unit functions, not a judgment on the moral content of a vow itself. Which brings us to our final question. This intricate system, this clear hierarchy of vows based on family roles, what does it reveal about the values, the structure, and the power dynamics of the society that created and lived by these rules? It's a fascinating window into another world and a reminder of how deeply law and social structure can be intertwined.